Why do students get involved with negative peer groups? Because they belong there. And I'll say that too. I have a brother who's 18 months younger than I, who actually died 2 years ago. And he spent most of his adult life in prison. And we had many conversations about this over the years when he was in and out of prison and dealing drugs and getting involved with negative peer groups. Because we grew up in a little town with fewer than 3,000 people in it. And we all knew the same kids. And I thought, how can this be? How can you not understand? And he said, my friends accept me for who I am. And no one else does. They are loyal to me. And no one else is. And so that perspective is really powerful. How are you going to overcome that? Often we try to overcome that by saying, you're going to need this someday. Next perspective word. Someday for most of our students is about 15 minutes from now. After that, it doesn't matter. Right? And so that's important. Something that even happens a week from now is not motivating. If you don't do this, you have a week, and if you don't turn it in, you're going to get a 0, and your grade is going to tank. How many of you have students whose grades tanked anyway? That was not very motivating, was it? So their understanding of the future is extremely limited, and one of the things, I'm going to say lots of things today, one of them is, if we can think about perspectives that impact our students, we need to tell them how this afternoon is going to be better than this morning, based on listening to what we have to say. And if we can't think about that, if we can't give them something practical, how do we expect them to come up with that? I'm going to say that again. If we can't come up with a way that what we have to say is relevant to them this afternoon, based on what we said this morning, how are they supposed to come up with that? That's going to be very, very difficult for them. And so I spend a lot of time thinking about student perspectives, how they see the world, and even more importantly, how can I change that? So that I'm not this person who says, sit down, shut up, listen to what I say, you're going to need this someday. No, so that they're fired up. How do I achieve that? If you had a bunch of students who were all fired up, you could do anything, right? How do we get there? And that's what I'm hoping to talk about today. So, our foundation for success is based not on what the rules are. People always ask me, Jim, Dr. Kestner, what is it that we can do that's so different that no student would ever risk taking the chance to disobey? It does not exist, does it? Those of you who've been around and who said, oh boy, I don't really want to do this, but I think if I throw it out there, they won't test me. You're tested within about 15 minutes because they want to see if you're serious. And you say, ooh, I don't really want to do that. And before you know it, you have students who say, well, you're not consistent. I don't believe anything you said. Right? That was my problem my first year. I had all these great ideas, I thought. But I thought, I hate to do that to them. I give them a break and a break and a break and a break. I'll tell another story. I was observing a high school teacher one time in suburban Chicago. It was a really great school. Not as great as this school, I mean, let's be honest. But it was a pretty great school. And he's sitting there, and he didn't really have significant discipline problems, but he had students who were constantly talking. And he would say, quiet please. Quiet please. And he was pretty assertive, he was pretty confident, it wasn't like he was scared. Quiet please. Quiet please. And I started counting how many times he said that. I couldn't help it. And when we were done, we had to meet. And I said, how do you think that went? And he said, pretty well, because he was focused on the curriculum. I said, okay, I have a question for you. It's a serious question. How many times do you say quiet please before you meet? And his neck got And I said, what should the answer be? And I share this story with my students. And you know what they say? Yell it out. Once. My students say, once. And I say, good, you're way ahead of him. Right? Now he figured it out. But if we are not consistent, we have challenges. But this is based on not an adherence to our rules. You see, I came into a school, my first year teaching, which was post-glass industry. And it had been known as, I'm not going to say the name, but you can look it up and figure it out, the glass capital of the world. And now the glass factories are all closed down. And it had been a booming town of about 25,000 people. And all of a sudden, they had booming unemployment. And people who were able to leave did. And so a lot of the people that I taught had parents who weren't really sure what to do. Story number 3. So I remember, I should have known when I went there and I was looking for a place to rent. Because I had never heard of the town before. And so our district secretary hooked me up with a real estate agent. And this person was driving me around town looking for places to rent on a first-year teacher's salary, which at that time I brought home about $900 a month. And he said, so what brings you to town? I said, well, I'm going to be a new English teacher at the school. And he said, you have a job? I should have known. You have a job? That wasn't the expectation. And so these students that I faced were very frustrated a lot of the time. And when I said, you need to learn for its own sake, you need to consider the ideas that people are sharing, they're like, okay, whatever. Tell me what the assignment is, and I'll decide whether to do it or not. And as I became frustrated with them, which I did, I tried to make them do it. How do you suppose that went? I see a lot of head shaking. Today, I like to ask my students, what can I make you do on the very first day of school? And some of them actually suggest things, and I think I wish. But the reality is I can't make them do anything. And I'll end up saying, I can't make you read, I can't make you write, I can't make you do homework, I can't make you study, I can't make you think, I can't make you do anything. And in fact, sometimes I like to pick a kid who's like a lineman, huge, bulking kid, and I say, if you wanted to get out of that seat and you were willing to pay any penalty to do it, could I keep you in that chair? And of course the answer is no. My favorite response to that came a few years ago when a student said, Mr. Kestner, I could break you in half. He was right. I said, well, thank you for not doing that. But the reality is, my demands meant virtually nothing. For one thing, their perspective was, you don't know what to tell us. You're some college guy. You teach English after all. There's no value in that. That was before AI could write papers for them. And they also said, our parents don't really care about what you're doing, so why should we? So I said, I have to change what I'm doing. And here's what I know, is every single person in my room makes decisions every single day about what they're going to do. And I emphasize to my students today, I can't make you do anything. So I'm not going to pretend. We're not going to play a game that you're used to, which is this. I pretend I can make you do things, and you pretend you did them because I made you. And I say, no, that's not how it works. I suggest things that I would like you to do because I think that they are essential for you to learn. And then you decide whether to do them or not. and you take full responsibility for that. And I try to focus on 3 areas that I call fundamental principles of character. Respect. First of all, and this is not in your slide, respect. So you have to respect yourself enough to do something. I have signs all over my classroom to talk about that. Discipline, which is not a negative thing. Discipline, yeah, I've been a coach most of my career, so I believe in discipline. But my students don't always equate that. They equate discipline with getting in trouble. And responsibility. You have to respect yourself enough to do things that are good for you. You have to discipline yourself to do things even when you don't want to. And that's going to happen a lot. And you have to take responsibility for all those choices. And those are the pillars that I say build character. And I assert to you today that if you had a group of students who respected themselves and others, who disciplined themselves to do things even when they didn't want to, and who took responsibility for all their choices, you could do anything with them. Right? Unfortunately, I've never taught a class full of students like that. And you probably don't either. So let's talk some more about perspectives. One of the things when I was at the university preparing people to be teachers is we talked about consistency, and I could spend the rest of my time saying that word and it wouldn't be inappropriate. But what is one of the parents' concerns when you take a young child and put them in a sandbox or on the beach for the first time? Yeah. So this is in Florida. This is my grandson Judah, by the way. And I have 4 grandchildren, 2 boys and 2 girls. By March 4th, I'm supposed to have a 5th, which has a lot to do with me deciding to retire, by the way. And we were on the beach in Florida, and I used to have this slide. It was a stock photo, and this kid is screaming, and he's got sand on his chin, and it's very effective for the emotion. But we were there, and I watched my grandson put sand in his mouth, and I started taking pictures. And now he stars in my slideshow. Someday he'll understand. Right now, he's 2.5. But Judah wasn't really bothered by it. But let me tell you another story. My oldest son, Max, and my kids all know I talk about them. They would probably give me permission because they know I do it anyway. But I have 3 kids, and they let me talk about them when I speak. Maxwell's my oldest. He is a band director. He teaches grades 5 through 12 in a fairly small school. He also teaches a section of kindergarten, first grade music because they did not have enough staff to cover that one. So he does that as well. And we've talked a lot about perspectives of that. But I remember we lived in the country and we built this really cool play set and we put a sandbox underneath it so they could play in the play set. And Max, I remember the first time I put him in there, and I'm just so excited because it's the first time he's been there. And within about, 12, 13 minutes, he put sand in his mouth, and he started screaming, and he started spitting, and he started coughing, and tears were running down his face, and I swept him up. And I said, "It's okay, Max." And I took him in the house, and I said, "Max, sand is awesome. But you have to be careful because if you eat the sand, it will be horrible. You will hate it. Always." And so he calmed down. He went back to the sandbox. And honest, he never did it again. 3 years later, my middle child, you know what's coming already, Jackson. Jackson is at the University of Wisconsin. Madison Jackson had to be convinced words meant nothing to Jackson. And I recall taking Max and Jack out to the sandbox and saying, okay, here we go. And it wasn't long before Jack, not only did he put sand in his mouth, but he's throwing it at Max and me, and it's going everywhere, and Max is screaming, and Jack is screaming, and I'm saying to myself, why didn't I bring my wife out here with me? And so I take them both into the house, and I clean them up, and I'm thinking, okay. I say, Jackson, sand is great. If you eat it, it will be bad. If you throw it in people's eyes, it hurts. Nobody wants that. Do you like the sand in your eyes? No! So don't do that. I kid you not, 9 minutes later, he did it. And again, and again, and again, and again, so many times I can't even count. So many times that Max started to notice when Jack was headed toward the sand and he would go to the other end of the playset. I know what's coming now. I'm not going to be part of that. And my wife and I are talking about, have you let me play in the sand? Because there are raccoons out there, possums, and all kinds of nasty things. It's like 15 yards from a home. I have a question. How many of you eat sand? Now, in all fairness, when I started talking about this, I would say how many teenagers eat sand. But that was before TikTok. And now I know that it's on TikTok. But teenagers will do anything on a day. But they don't do it for pleasure, and neither do you. And Jack stopped eating sand eventually. Because it was the same all the time. Why am I hammering on this example so much? That's consistency. The sand is the same every single time. It doesn't care what your intent was. All it does is sit there. But people learn how to interact with sand. And they build amazing creations, and they hang out on it, and they have so much fun in sand that it will never be good if they don't use it properly. And so, to be effective in building character, to be effective in influencing the perspectives of our students so that they respect themselves and others, discipline themselves in a positive way, to do things that help them to take responsibility for their actions, we need to be more like the sand. Now, in college, we taught that, and it was have appropriate consequences. But what are the appropriate consequences for students who talk out in class? How does the consequence fit? That doesn't make any sense, does it? Very quickly, these generalities that we like to say, oh, this is what you need to do, become useless without some grounding in our day-to-day activities. And so, before I leave this morning, I have to give you some examples of exactly what that means. But if we can be the same, we can teach every student eventually. It's also important, this is a good time to mention, many of you are probably familiar with something called the prefrontal cortex in your brain. You heard of that? Raise your hand. Okay, I'll do you one better. Tell me at what age it is fully developed. 25 is right. I wish I had a prize for you. How many of you have students under 25? Why do they do stupid things? Why do they make bad choices? Wonder if their decision-making abilities are impaired by an underdeveloped prefrontal cortex, perhaps. By the way, here's a little bonus for brand new teachers. If you're under 25, it wasn't my fault. My prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed. All right, so try that. Not if I was try that. All right, let's talk about policies. People always ask me about policies. These are some policies that tend to fit the kind of things that a university would tell you should do. They are positively phrased. They are fairly short. They are very specific. Take responsibility, respect rights, attend class, participate, remain silent, and my last one is my bathroom policy. But our policies only set a tone, folks. If every single person in this auditorium right now had the same exact policies, do you suppose the students would all respond in the same exact way? Almost every head that's bothering to respond is shaking. Because it's not about the policies, is it? Part of it is the enforcement. Consistency is key, we know that. But it's not just that. I was very consistent my first year, and what I did was create students who defied me at every possible opportunity, and I fought with them day after day after day. In fact, here's another story for you. I remember a girl who, one day, I had her just before lunchtime, and I was trying to get my students to stay in their seats until I dismissed them. They wanted to hop up as soon as the bell rang and run to lunch, right? And I thought, at least these kids have to listen because they don't want to be late for lunch. And so I'm leveraging that against them, right? And one day, the bell rings and a bunch of students hop up. And I was mad. Not gonna lie, I was furious. They had been really bad that day. And I said, hold it right there! And they froze. And then, for the rest of the school year, I would hear her go by my classroom in the hallway, saying, hold it right there. Hold it right there. I can picture her, I can tell you her name, but I won't. Policies just set how we implement them and so on. And I've given you an example of my policies. I'm not going to go through them all. I am going to talk to you about some elements of them that have been chosen to impact students in a positive way. But the implementation is everything. I have seen teachers with one policy who have fabulous classroom management. And I've seen teachers with 15 policies who have horrible classroom management. It's not about the policies. It's about what they do with them. So let's talk about that a little bit. It's about student perspectives. You're shocked that I said that. It's about student perspectives and how do we influence those. So if you were to look at my list of classroom policies, I have to say, when I came back the second year to teach, I knew I was going to have this same girl in my class. I did not know she would be my first hour of the year, and so I was a little bit intimidated, I'm going to be honest, by that, because she was very assertive. But I knew, because I was teaching in a very small high school that had about 350 students in it, and I was half the English department, that I was going to have a whole bunch of these students again. And I had created very, very chaotic relationships with them. And I thought, I can't handle a second year like that. I got to do something different. And I developed the policies that are in front of you now. But more importantly, I developed a perspective. And so I had a phrase across the top that if you look at it says, the policies in this classroom stem from our responsibilities. My responsibilities as a teacher and your responsibilities as students. Folks, this is really key to understanding why I have amazing classroom management in my building. Because after the second week of school, I have almost no classroom management issues. Okay? So I start off explaining why we're here, and I say it's not surprising that many of you think that our policies are fairly arbitrary. Now, they would never use that word, but they are fairly arbitrary because year after year after year, they see different ones, and they categorize them. This is a nice teacher who's going to let us chew gum, and this is a mean teacher who's not. This is a nice teacher who's going to let us lay our head down as long as our eyes are open. And this is a mean teacher who's going to slap us in the head as soon as our head starts to go. I say, look, we have responsibilities. Let me talk about mine first, because I want you to understand why we're really here. By the way, one of my favorite things is people say, Mr. Kestner, school isn't like the real world. And I say, why not? Well, because in the real world, for one thing, we get paid. That's fair. But from another thing, people who do really horribly in school can be very successful. I'm going to cut to a short version of this story to say, as a cross-country coach for decades, I found myself standing on a golf course at a large cross-country meet. And the owner of this course and several others, I thought would never have a future when he was in my image class. And I thought, changed his mind, didn't he? Probably when he was 25, he started this. Anyway. It's about perspectives that we set up, and I say to my students, all right, I have 3 roles. I start with me, because if I start with them, they might think, yeah, this is about you coming at us for what we have to do. So I started with me, and I said, all right, my first responsibility is to teach you everything I can about, and then I put in the details of whatever class it is. Right. I happen to be at a fairly small school. I teach English 1, English 2, English 4, and an elective college prep English class. And so I literally teach all 4 grade levels in the high school. When I started teaching, I also taught middle school. And so I've taught a lot of different students. And when I talk to them, I fill in what this class is about. So I try to be as specific as possible. So I tell them, if I don't do this, I will be fired. They'll get somebody who can. That's the real world, isn't it? I have a job. I love it. But I have a job, and it has expectations of me. And so I have to do my job if I expect to keep it. Second, I am here to evaluate you. And like we know, no, I'm here to evaluate you because, I don't know, I didn't study at the end departments in Illinois. Students have to have 4 years of credit in high school English to get a diploma. And so I say, guess what? I have to show you earn that. Guess how I do that? Grades. And I tell them, I hate grading. If I didn't have to grade one thing, I never would. Really? I hate grading. You think I enjoy going through your essay and every 4th word having to stop and make a comment? No. That is not fun to me. But I do it because I have to assign grades, and they need to be fair. And someone wants to be valedictorian, and someone else just wants to pass. And I have to say who deserves which. But I'm also here to help you if you are challenged. And I will do that to the extent of my ability because I care about you very much. And I tell my students, please don't take my word for it. First of all, talk to the upperclassmen because I've been around a while and they'll say, yep, you need that. But more than that, don't even believe them. Just hang out for a few months and let me demonstrate it to you. Because every single day you come in here and I demonstrate to you that I care very, 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 very much about you. Not just your grades, not what I'm teaching you. In fact, you can hate my class, you can hate English, you you can hate school, you can hate this community, but I'm here because I care about you. And I want you to have the ability to do anything you want when you are no longer required to be here. And I will help you do that. So, folks, that's an attempt at changing students' perspectives about what this is all about. I have told students in meetings, I understand that some days the lowest level of importance of anything you're doing is my class. And I'm okay with that. Because some of you don't know where you're going to live tomorrow. You don't know what you're going to eat this afternoon. You have all kinds of issues that I can't even imagine. So I'm not going to presume that I know your life, but here's what I'm going to say. I care about you, and I want to help you to live the life you want when you leave this place. So I say my third responsibility, and this is really important. If you are tuning out, some of you are, it's okay. If you are tuning out, please tune in. My third responsibility is to create and maintain an environment where every student who wants to learn can do that. I'm going to say it again. Maintain an environment where every student who wants to learn can do that. I say, I can't make you do anything. And then I ask them a question. Do you suppose there's anyone in here who wants to learn? Don't point at them. You'll embarrass them. But is there anyone here, do you suppose, who wants to learn? And they always nod. And guess what? If they don't, I walk right up to their desk and look at them until they do. Because it's very important to me that they agree with that. And they always do. And I say, if you disagree, we need to have a conversation about that, because everything I'm going to do this year is based on that. Every class has students who want to learn. And then I say, is it their right to do that? And now, more quickly, they nod. Yes, it's their right. I say, so let's talk about rights. Do they have to earn that? Right. They don't have to earn that. I say, let's imagine I have a student who pretty much, I talk about this the very first day I see them in fall. I say, imagine I have a student who has checked out mentally all the way until March 3rd. And March 3rd, that student says, I'm going to learn for about 7 minutes today. Do they have the right to learn those 7 minutes? And the students say, yeah, they do. Do they have to ask your permission to do that? No, they don't. Teachers, that's the #1 perspective that produces issues in classroom management in my classroom, because it's not about me versus you. It's not about control. I say my third responsibility is to maintain an environment where, and I have 46-minute class periods, which are way inadequate, but I don't have time doing that. I have 46 minutes with you a day. That's all I have. And I'm going to use them all. Every single day. Every single moment. And if you take away from that, you are taking away from someone's right to learn during some of those minutes. Do you have the right to do that? And they shake their heads. Therefore, my job is to make sure that anybody who wants to exercise that right to learn can do that any moment of any day. And I will defend that right every single day. I use a word with my students and they will tell you this word. I am relentless. I am relentless in defending that right. It's not about you. As far as I'm concerned, you can learn nothing from me. I don't mean that. But as far as I'm concerned, I can't make you learn, so I'm not going to agonize over your choice not to. But guess what? You get in the way of someone else, and I am all over that. That's not okay. You're taking someone's fundamental rights away from them, and I am not okay with that. Make sense? Now I also say, students, you have 3 responsibilities. You have them on your sheet. have to respect the rights of fellow students and your teacher, because they have rights. And this isn't going to work if you don't. And if you don't, I'm going to do something, because I can't let you do that. Right? And then I have students who say, okay, I'm with you, Mr. Kestner, until I say this one. I need you to participate when called upon to do so, and remain silent when called upon to do so. The default is to remain silent. By the way, I use that word on purpose, because people tapping a pencil will say, I wasn't talking. And I learned over the years, I just say, are you silent? Okay. Takes care of it. But when I say participate, you're like, wait a minute. I hate group work. You're going to make me do that? No, because I can't make you do anything. But I'm going to assign you to a group. I'm going to grade you. And I want you to do your part. And I'll say, do you suppose if everyone in here contributed to the learning environment that we would learn more? And they begrudgingly say, yes. Yes. That's why I do it, because I want to teach you everything else we can. And if you're actively engaged in it, we're all doing it. So that's what I'm going to do. But beyond that, I say, guess what? There are things you can do to contribute to the learning environment even when you don't actively participate. And I give them this example. I do lots of examples in class. And I say, let's imagine I pick a student. I say, I call on you, and you weren't even paying attention. You don't know what the question was. What are you going to say? And as you can imagine, I get lots of answers. And the other students are looking at me like, ha, 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 he wasn't paying attention. And sometimes the students are bold enough to say, I didn't know I wasn't listening. Other times they say, I'll say, I don't know. So I'll say, okay, a couple things. First, if you weren't listening, just tell me you weren't listening. Because I'm not going to make you feel bad. You chose not to listen. I'll say it again. It takes me less time to ask the question again than it does to berate you for not listening. I'm just going to repeat it. And now if you don't know, you can say, I don't know. But here's what I don't want. Or you're staring at me. I tell them I can't crawl around in your head. Probably don't want to. I know you don't want me to. So, please, when you choose to say, Mr. Kestner, I don't know, you are protecting people's right to learn as many of those 46 minutes as we have. Because now I can decide, do I want to follow up with you? Or do I want to let it pass? Do I want to give the answer? Do I want to ask another student? Do I want to ask other questions? What do I want to do? But if you're just staring at your desk or staring at me, I have no idea where you are. So help me out. That is participation, folks. Now, does that mean you can always say, I don't know? Well, yeah, because I can't make you do anything. But here's what I say. If you regularly do that, you and I are going to meet outside of class, and we're going to talk about why. Is it because you're shy? Is it because you're afraid of how people are going to perceive it? Is it because you really don't know? Is it because you never get more than 2 hours sleep a night, and your brain is just gone during this class period? What is it? Because the reason for that impacts what we're going to do to try to fix it. Because for me, I want you to know the answers. So we're going to work on ways that you say, I do know, and I'm going to answer. And when you do, it's going to feel really good. Make sense? Last. Your third responsibility, students, is to take responsibility for your choices, because I can't make you do anything. And so if you acknowledge that I can't make you do anything, there is only one person responsible for your choices, and that is you. And so I want you to take responsibility for those. I want you to recognize that that was your choice, and that you made it. And in this instant, I talk to them about some things related to choices they have made in the past, not my specific students, but past students. So I'll say, now let me give you an example of how this plays out sometimes. Some of you are going to be dishonest with me when you say why you didn't do something. I'm going to send a sheet home. I'm going to ask you to fill it out. And you're going to take the sheet home. And you're going to have every intention of filling it out. Because it's August. Maybe we want to get started on a good note. But here's what's going to happen. You're not going to get a call because nobody called you. You're going to get an instant message or a text from your friend. And you're going to say, guess what? That Netflix series that we've been waiting for all summer dropped 3 episodes tonight. And my mom said, if you want to come over, she'll buy pizza and we can watch them all. And you're not stupid. You're going to say, I'm in. And you're going to head over there. You're not going to say, well, let me do Mr. Kestner's worksheet first. You're going to head over there and you're going to think, I'll do the worksheet when you get home. You're going to feel good, you can do that. But then you get home and you ate too much, and your stomach hurts, and all you can do is just go to bed. Next day, you're going to be collecting those, and you're not going to have yours. And I'm going to ask you the question, do you not have yours? You're going to say, no, Mr. Kestner, I forgot to take it home. And you're going to say that to me because think I will feel better about that response than the real response. And I'm here to tell you today that that's not true. Instead, when you tell me you didn't take something home, I'm going to go into problem solver mode because that's what I do. I try to solve problems because and you're not. And I'm going to try to solve problems through my experiences, and I'm going to say, oh, well, let me give you guidelines or reminders or all kinds of stuff you can do to take stuff home. And you may have never forgotten to take something home in your life. So none of that helps you a bit. Right? And I'm feeling pretty good that this is probably going to happen again because we did not address the issue. And they're looking at me blankly and I'm saying, here's what I want you to do, Mr. Kestner. There was this Netflix series. And I don't say it, I'll say, I want you to tell me what really happened. Because wouldn't it be cool if you could have those kind of experiences and get my work done? Wasn't that your intention? Wouldn't it be awesome? Especially if this is a habit for you. Wouldn't you love it if you didn't get in a hole that you have to climb out of? What if I could help you do that? And folks who are here now, I'm going to tell you this. I think long and hard about what are the options. Because if I can't come up with something, how can I expect a 14-year-old to do that? If I can't come up with something they could do, how do I expect them to? I try to always have options for them. And I'm going to be honest with you, sometimes I can't think of anything. And I'll say, let me talk to some people about that. I'm going to get back to you. And now I'm emailing colleagues, I'm talking to people, I'm trying to get suggestions. What have you done with this situation? How can you help? And I'll just tell you now, feel free to reach out to me. I'm old, so I've dealt with this a lot. Feel free to ask me. And I always say this, you can follow up with me afterwards. I will not try to sell you anything because first and foremost, I don't think that'd be fair. But second, from a practical standpoint, I don't have anything to sell. So feel free to follow up with me. You have my cell phone number and my email address on your emails. So you may contact me. If I don't contact you immediately, like in 48 hours, contact me again, because I will. All right. Anyway, I say I want to help you problem solve. Because I understand that some of you are just like, I don't know what to do. And I'm not going to judge you. I tell my students, there's a perspective for you. You don't see me wear robes to class because I'm not a judge. You don't see me wear a policeman's uniform to school because I'm not a cop. I'm a teacher. I don't wear a tie, but I'm a teacher. And so that's what I like to do. If I wanted to be a cop, I would be a cop. If I wanted to be a judge, maybe I couldn't, but I would try. But I'm not. I'm not going to judge you. You are where you are. And I want to help you problem solve so you can access whatever it is you want when you are no longer required to come to this place. And I work really hard to make sure I don't say anything judgmental. If I send unintended messages, if I get angry when someone defies me, guess what? They say, well, all that crap about you not controlling us was just words. You are judging me. And I'm not going to lie to you. There have been times where I've had to go, because I'm about to throw something out the window. It's my job. And my freedom. So I'm going to take it with it. But I try really hard not to judge. I try really hard to say, okay, and I'll often start with, okay, so let me hear you what you said, and I'll repeat that. That helps me to calm down a little bit. And now I try to problem solve. And if I can't do it immediately, I will follow up with them. You know what? I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know, but I'm going to find out because I care enough to find out. And we're going to talk again, and I'm going to find out. Now, I've listed several policies on the sheet. Specific bulleted policies. The first one is take responsibility for your actions. I always say that one's on there twice, isn't it? That's because it's so important. It really matters. But ultimately, what I want to do next is talk about my implementation plan for those. Can you still hear me when I hold the mic down here? Super. So, I have a simple progression that I go through with my students that makes them responsible for their behaviors. And I like to do a little role play. I'm going to come down into the audience for a minute because I think I have time. You two are next to each other. You know each other pretty well. Could you start a conversation? Yeah, I don't care what it's about. Just start a conversation. My students are much louder than that when we do this activity. Go ahead. So I do this demonstration with my students. Keep talking. I didn't think it would be this hard. Please keep talking. Okay? They want to know what I have to say. I'm going to really say that. I imagine they really want to know what I'm going to say. But here's what I say to my students because they don't care what I have to say. I say, most of you are looking at me. If I were teaching, you would still be hearing everything I have to say. They aren't. Are they? That's your choice. But what happens if I say, ladies, please stop? How many people are learning now? I see this. 0. Thank you. 0 people are learning. And I'll say to my students, why on earth would I do that? Why would I stop everyone from learning to stop 2 people who are not? You know why? Because I want to be in control. Because I want everybody to know that they can't do that. And I'm afraid it's going to spread all around the room. Well, guess what? Sometimes it does. And when it does, then I stop it. Because now a whole bunch of students are tuned out. But until that time, here's what I do. I have a seating chart with all my students' names and pictures on it. It has a pencil attached to it. And I just make a little pencil mark by a student's name. Now you can see I don't stand in one place. I don't carry my chart around. I have it on a clipboard, and it's on a podium. And the podium is way over by the door of my classroom. But periodically, I'll see something. And then I just come by my podium, and I make a little mark, and I keep teaching. And then a couple minutes before the bell rings, I say, I need to see the following people at the end of class before you go on. Those people come up and I say, first of all, this is not a big deal. You are not in trouble. However, I need you to understand that the conversation you were having or the tapping you were doing on someone's head or whatever it is had the potential to interfere with someone's ability to learn in those moments, right? And almost every time they say, yes, Mr. Kestner, I'm sorry. But even if they don't, I don't care. I'm not going to judge them. I'm not going to get offended because they didn't give me the right attitude. I'm just going to say, so, this is a reminder. It's not a big deal, but it's a reminder and you will not get another one until the next semester. One. Remember my teacher who said, quiet please, quiet please, quiet please. I mean it the first time. And I'm going to show you that by not doing the same thing again. So, what if something happens again? And it doesn't have to be talking this time. Anything that might prevent someone else from learning. That's a perspective thing. I don't have 15 categories of misbehavior. I don't care if it could disrupt someone from learning, including you. You don't do your homework. You have a reminder. I don't care what it is. And you only get one for each semester in high school. I will get longer for middle school students. But anyway, I say, you get one. After that, we're going to have a meeting. It doesn't say detention on the sheet. Because I don't believe that detention is the most effective way to change student behavior. If it were, we wouldn't have the same students on the detention list over, over. Instead, we would say, oh, not through that door. Plus, it takes it out of my hands. In our school, we have an administrator who supervises detention. I don't want that. They're not going to problem solve the way I am. They're just going to yell at it and say, you need to pay attention to your Kestner's class. You need to. That's not what I want. Because they're just going to go glassy-eyed, and then they're going to do whatever they want. I want a chance to impact their decision-making. I want a chance to impact their perspective. And so I'm going to say, okay, we're going to do a problem-solving session. And it doesn't have to be at any specific time. It can be before school, after school, during lunch. It can be even during class. If I'm giving you time to work on something and nobody needs my help, because it's not a punishment. It's about problem solving. And so I want to help you figure out how to be more successful. You can be honest with me about anything that's getting in the way. And I will not judge you. I'm going to take you where you are. And I'm going to try to help you figure out what comes next. So we're going to talk about that. If that doesn't work, next step, I'm going to invite your parents to come and join us for another session like that. Because now I want help from home. Inevitably, I have students who say, well, my mom won't come in. I say, well, I can't make her do anything either. They're not really protesting my policy. They're just trying to disrupt. And I say, fine, then I'll skip that step. But we'll make the opportunity, and if she doesn't, then I'll go to the fourth step. The fourth step is to involve the appropriate administrator. So now, we're to the point where I feel like I've done what I could in my role as a classroom teacher, and I need help. And so we're going to invite the administration, and I'm going to share every single thing we've done. And then administrator is going to chime in. Let me give you some statistics, and I share these with my students. Within the first 4 days of school, about 65% of my students get a reminder. A huge portion, mostly freshmen, because they don't believe me. And I tell them, I'm going to be very strict about this. When the bell rings tomorrow, I tell them you're going to be in here, and I'm going to have a writing prompt up on the screen because I want you to write every single day in my class. And there are going to be students who look at that writing prompt and they're going to struggle. I don't even know how to start answering that. And when they hear your conversations, they're going to have to rethink again and again and again. Should they have to do that? And they'll say, no, Mr. But some of you are going to forget that tomorrow. And you're going to be telling a funny story, or you're going to be bouncing your friend against the desks. And I'm going to call you up. And that's going to be a reminder. Because I want you to know I mean it. I'm not going to penalize you. I'm just going to remind you. In fact, I will never penalize you. Because I don't believe that penalties change behavior. I want to problem solve with you. So instead, I'm going to say, what are your other options? How are you feeling? Why are you doing this? And when I first sit down with you and I say, why are you still talking after a reminder? You're going to say, what are they going to say? I don't know. And I have a prepared list of possible reasons. And I'm going to start going through. Is it this? Is it this? Is it this? Is it this? Oh yeah, that's it. Okay? So, let's see what we can do about that. Because I want you to be successful, but more importantly, if you choose not to, I can't let you stop other people from learning. And I will not, because I am relentless at protecting my students' right to learn. Not just occasionally, but even in March, when you're learning for 7 minutes for the first time. So we're going to problem solve. If that doesn't fix it, next step is invite your parents in, because I want to involve them in it. Maybe they can help. Maybe there's something they can share that I don't know. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to invite the administrators in. Those are my 4 steps. So statistically, 65% of my students within the first 4 days of school get a reminder. This year, guess how many student meetings I've had? I have 130 students a day. Almost half of them are freshmen. Just yell it out. 10. Had 3 meetings with students. Guess how many of those turned into meetings with parents? 0. I have been in my school district since fall of 2019. I have had 3 parent meetings in all of these 7 years. 2 of them were with teachers' kids. Yeah, really. It's so funny because this fall, when I was talking about this, and I'm talking about statistics, one of those kids he's a senior this year. He's in my class. I'm saying, how many parent meetings do you suppose I've had? And he says, well, at least one, Mr. Kestner. And I laughed. I said, yeah, hopefully we won't have one this year. He said, we won't. And he has me to remind me. He's grown up a lot since 2 years ago when I last saw him. Anyway, guess how many meetings I've had with the administrator in 7 years of being in this district? 1. And I wasn't always keeping track, but I am very confident that since 1986, I have had fewer than 5 meetings with administrators. Folks, when I was in grad school full-time, I was hired to supervise in-school detention or in-school suspension, however you want to call it. Because I don't get right. You choose any way you want. I'm just going to do whatever the rules say to do. No big deal to me. And when the students don't get what they want, which is they'll do anything if it gets a rise out of them. Did you see how Kestner looked at me? That was awesome. Which, by the way, be careful not to call students out in front of their peers because they will put up with any penalty to look cool in front of their peers. I take them in the hall. We have a one-on-one conversation. It's a whole other kid out there. Okay. Anyway, folks, fewer than what I can count on one hand. It works. I've taught thousands of students. It works. I supervise students in South Chicago neighborhoods, or supervise teachers in South Chicago high schools with very significant gang representation. One time I had this math teacher. She's about 5'3", and she is not very assertive. And I was really worried about her because she's teaching in the South Chicago high school. And she said, "Don't worry, Mr. Kestner. I'm going to follow your policies and everything will be fine." And I thought, yeah, okay. So the week after her school year starts, which is after Labor Day, I called her up. And I said, "How are you doing?" She said, "Great." I said, "You got any problem students?" She said, "No." And I scheduled a time to come and visit her the next day, or the next week. And when I came to her building, which by the way, they would not let me in the hallways during passing periods because they could not assure my safety. Okay? They said, "You will be escorted by a guard during the class period." And by the way, a few months later, she would call me and say, "Jim, I don't know if you heard, but one of our math teachers got stabbed between classes. It wasn't me. I just want you to know that." It's a rough place to teach. I get there, and I'm thinking, oh Lord, what's going to happen? And I see these kids coming in, and they're trying to hide their gang colors because they get in trouble for that, but I can see them because I went through a gang recognition training a few months before that. And they came in, and they grabbed a folder. First of all, they went from the hallway, came into the room, absolutely silent, took a folder. They went out. She just looked at them and said, "Hi, welcome." And then they went to their seat and they sat down and they started working. She didn't have something on a screen. She had them do some writing at the beginning of every class. She wasn't an English teacher, but anyway, she had them write some stuff. And they just did it. And you would have thought that I was in like New Trier, top of the nation high school. Wasn't true. I said, "I can't believe that. What are you doing?" She's just what you said. Folks, I'm telling you that because I don't think it really matters what your students are. What matters is you getting to their perspective, getting to understand. Now, do I say that every student will naturally respect other students? Heck no. And when I've had multiple meetings, it's been to help them understand how they're harming themselves as well as others. And ultimately, when I've met with an administrator, it's been to say, "You're about to go bye-bye and take this class again next year because I can't have you here anymore." Okay? But this is how we change students' perspectives. One of the challenges that we face is that while students hear us a lot, they don't always pay attention to what we say. And I'm a big Peanuts fan. And of course, you know that every adult in a Peanuts cartoon speaks like this. Wah, 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 wah. Right? We speak teacher, which is effectively sounds without meaning a lot of the time. Why does that matter? Well, it matters because even the good stuff we say, even the important stuff we say, can fly on past with them not getting it. And so, there's an analogy that occurred to me one day. I'm going to be honest, I was in the shower. And I was like, oh, this is cool. You've heard the phrase a train of thought. All of our students have trains of thought about all kinds of different things, right? And I was just thinking about a student's train of thought. It just popped into my head. I'm trying to think about how to reach a student. And this student's train of thought. And then I thought, oh my gosh, what a great analogy for student perspectives. because trains are big and heavy and hard to stop. Kind of like student perspectives. Furthermore, I thought, if I were shouting the most important information from a crossing at a train, and a student is riding in the car, and I'm screaming it at the top of my lungs, how likely is it they hear me? They're not going to hear me, are they? Because trains are designed to block out the noise. Trains have a destination. Students pick it, even if it's not going to a good place sometimes, because at least they know where it's going. It's predictable that way. And if I want to change students' perspectives, what I have to do is stop the train. Because if I can stop the train, I can get their attention for a few seconds, and we can talk about something that matters. So I used to spend hours and hours and hours agonizing over policies. Can I make them better? Is there a wording that's going to make a difference? How do I reach students? And then I realized I need to spend those hours thinking about how to stop trains. Because if I can stop the train, now I can get your attention for a minute. And now you can hear me. You may not, because you may not be ready. But you may. Ready for the next story? I'm saying it anyway. I had a student who was a senior, and she had taken my English 2 class twice because she failed both fall and spring semesters. So yes, I am unable to reach everyone. Confess that. But she was really hard to reach. She had a very difficult life. And every now and then, as you probably don't have a hard time imagining, I would slip into what I call my sermon mode, talking about why things matter and how students need to do things to take responsibility for their lives, right? One day I'm in the middle of that, and I'm halfway across the room, and I hear her voice, very distinctive, "Mr. Kestner, why do you keep trying?" Everybody's looking at me now. Or they're looking at me, but mostly. If you imagine that this is her desk, I came up to her desk and I put my hands on it and I leaned towards her and I just looked at her for a while until I felt really confident. And then I said, "Because you're worth it." And I stared at her until it got awkward. Then I stepped back. A week later, she submitted a poem to a poetry contest, and she got published by a real poetry contest. She had never even tried before. Folks, I had her as a freshman, and she barely made it. I had her as a sophomore, and it's a little harder, and she didn't make it. So she took it twice. She made it the second time, but oh my gosh, just barely. And I do this kind of stuff all the time. I have them every day. And I'm talking to her, and she didn't get it until that day. Why am I relentless? Because I never know when you're going to get it. I generally stand outside my classroom as students are coming in first thing in the morning, and I say hello to every single one of them. My students come in and I don't know who they are. I'll say, "Welcome to English, I'm so glad you're here." By the way, I used to say, "How are you?" because that just flies out of my mouth, and then I realize some students don't want to think about how they are, so I stopped doing that. Say, "Welcome to English, I'm so glad you're here." "Welcome to English, I'm so glad you're here." I cannot wait to get this class started. We are going to have some great times this year. And sometimes they're like, "Are you going to be like this all year?" Yes. Yes, as a matter of fact, I am. I'll say, ask that for class. I I never change. I'm excited to be here. I can't imagine another place where I'd be. This is awesome. I love doing this. And so, yeah, this is me. You're going to get it. So, I keep coming at them. I had a colleague who was watching as this student filed into my classroom every single day for my first hour class. And I would say, "Hi, so glad to see you." Every single day. It's spring. "Hi, so glad to see you." I didn't change. Every single day. He's like, "Jim, you know she's not going to look at you." I said, "No, she hasn't looked at me yet. I am relentless. I will never quit trying." Guess what? Before the year was out, she looked at me once. You know why? She was wearing a Beatles t-shirt. And I'm a huge Beatles fan. And I said, "That's a Beatles t-shirt." It didn't say the Beatles. And she's like, "Yes, it is." And I thought, she speaks. After that, she looked at me every single day. She wasn't ready yet. And I have students every single year who are not ready yet. But that's not how I judge my success or failure. I judge my success or failure on how hard I try. Every single day, I have 46 minutes with each of my classes, and I am relentless in using those 46 minutes to help my students succeed. Yelling at them does not help them succeed, except like this. But telling them they're bad doesn't help them succeed. It might make me feel better for a minute, but they hear that all the time. Students who think it's okay because they're smart to mail it in. Had a unique experience in my second teaching job. 2 consecutive high school valedictorians went to college and flunked out. True story. How could that be? And then later I would relate it to an experience I had as a sophomore in college when I had a roommate named Bob. I feel pretty comfortable sharing that name. There are a couple more Bobs. So I said, after Bob got a 0 GPA from not ever going to class and getting kicked out of university, "Bob, why are you here?" And he said, "My parents can make me come to college, but they can't make me come to class." Okay? Bob was from Naperville. I don't think I'm sharing too much identifying information. There are a couple Bobs from Naperville. And I think, oh my gosh, that perspective, right? What if I have high-achieving students and it has nothing to do with them? I look for that. I try to help all of my students. I try to differentiate as much as I possibly can. I'm trying to stop the train of those who say, "I don't need to study, I do well already." To prepare them for times when they will have to study, so they're ready. Everybody. How do I stop the train? I want to be more explicit about some of the things that I've done with my policies. I introduce students, they come in, and I say, remember when I was talking about you should be silent unless given permission to speak? I say the default is silence, and when you come in my room, you come through this doorway, and I want to paint a picture for you. This is not just any door, folks. This is the magical portal of learning. And yes, I even say that to my seniors, and they snicker, but later they repeat it to other students. My elementary teachers always say, "Yeah, like that." It's a magical portal of learning. What that means is, when you're out there, that is not a learning place. But when you come in here, it is. And there are people who came wanting to start right away. Do they deserve the right to learn during those moments if they want to? Yes, Mr. Kestner. Then give it to them. And I will protect their right relentlessly every single day. Now, I am also honest with them. I won't put you down for a reminder until the bell rings and you're still talking. Just remember. But the bell says my 46 minutes have begun. I should not have to say anything, and I don't. And the reason that 65% of my students get a reminder is largely because of that. Because they're talking, yap, when the bell rings. Now, in all fairness, talking is the number one thing that my students do that's a minor thing that turns into something else. And so I also give them a technique. I have this technique for you today, where I say, it might be, because they come up to me and they're like, but Mr. Kestner, I needed to ask for a pencil. I didn't have one. And they're expecting me to say, well, why didn't you have a pencil? But I say, it doesn't matter. What matters is what you were saying distracted some students around you. And I'm not going to listen to every conversation and see if it's okay. Maybe I could, but I'm not about that. So here's what I do to give you permission to do that. All you have to do, if you have a legitimate reason, or if you just want to tell a funny story, and it's only going to take a couple seconds, just raise your hand, and I will look at you, even if I'm in the middle of talking. If the first thing I see you do is point to another student, I will either nod or shake my head. And if I nod, I'm going to keep on yapping, and you go ahead and share your funny story, whatever it is. If it's whispers, and it's just a few seconds, and now you're back with me, I don't mind. Reality, folks, they're going to do it anyway. I give them permission. That's a train stopper. Oh, really? He's going to let us do that? Yes, I am. And now I don't hear excuses. Well, I needed to. And then at the reminder, when they say that, I say, well, here's what you do next time. And I tell them, remind each other before I get to them. And if I didn't get to them yet, you might save them being called up at the end of class. That's great. Because I'm not interested in catching you doing something wrong. I'm interested in you helping everyone in here to succeed. Folks, if you find my classroom policies useful, if you want to use those, go ahead. If you want to contact me about how to adapt them to what you're doing, feel free. They're not magic. Just about any policies work. Consistency is huge. But more importantly, perspectives. I tell my students, you're going to be tempted to lie to me. Remember the Netflix thing? You're going to be tempted to lie to me. And you've heard a lot of teachers say, don't ever lie to me, because as soon as you do, I can never trust you again. I'm not going to say that to my freshmen in September when I'm going to have them for 2 more years. I say, if you feel like your best option is to lie to me, lie to me. Am I going to like it? No. But I'm not going to judge you. I'm going to take you where you are. Do whatever you think you need to do, because I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to problem solve with you, and I will take you wherever you are and help you get as far as you want to go. Every single day. Folks, thank you for your time. Hope you have